Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and I am joined again by Mr. Harry Jobson.
I'm here.
And it has been 3 weeks now. We did record an episode for last week, but there were some audio issues. It wasn't in sync at all. And also, I just didn't think it was a particularly good record anyway, to be honest. I think probably the best part of the episode we recorded was we spent about 6 minutes just talking about Australian cinema and Harry getting annoyed at me because I hadn't seen all these classics that he's a fan of.
Well, I feel like they're very important culturally, but that conversation, look, that's in the past. We live in the present.
Yeah.
The audio quality might sound a bit different. It's recording on my end today, just because of the mess up we had. So we're just sort of trying to
I don't know why, because we'll see how it works this week. We are going to be talking about The Big Short, and this is sort of a loose tie-in to the upcoming film Dumb Money, which I don't know Harry, how up to date are you with like new films? Like how far in advance do you?
Unless it's like comic book films, which sounds bad, but unless it's they are comic book films in which I know 10 years in advance. I'm not too up to date unless I see the advertisement for it in the cinemas. Like, I didn't know there was an Equalizer 3 until like yesterday. I was like, oh, cool. I don't like the Equalizer movies, but I thought, I don't mind them. They're just movies.
I'm someone who I keep up to date with movies as much as I can. But then there's all these films that premiere at film festivals that everybody loves, and I don't know about them until like they come out at film festivals and they get sort of film festival awards and everything. But I try to keep up to date, but I look at people who like predict the Oscars like a year in advance, and half the films they mention, I'm like, I have not even heard of that. I don't keep up. I'm not like right on the pulse. I don't know about like every movie that is coming out for the calendar year or whatever. But we're tying this into a film called Dumb Money, which for Harry, I assume you haven't heard of this film. I assume you don't know what I'm talking about at all.
No, I have not heard of Dumb Money.
Basically, what it is it's a film. Do you remember, like a couple years ago, there was that Wall Street thing where people were investing in GameStop?
Oh yeah.
No,
I do know about. Yeah, I do know about this film.
Yeah, well, that's what we're tying this into because they're both These Big Short is about the stock market, and so I guess it kind of works.
It's kind of about the
but also
market.
I do about the housing market. Yeah, but there's like stock. Yeah. We probably should. Wolf of Wall Street maybe would have worked better because that's about stocks. But this one I feel like is probably more in tune with that. But anyway, I also wanted to just talk about this film anyway because I really like it. That's just me laying out my thoughts right up front. And you see, we're talking about The Big Short, but I feel like we're also going to talk about Adam McKay's career as a whole, because I recently this year basically watched every Adam McKay film because I hadn't seen many of them.
Wait, really?
The only ones I'd seen prior to this were The Other Guys and Don't Look Up.
It's crazy to me to think about you watching one of my favorite cult classic movies, Talladega Nights. Like,
yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about Adam McKay a bit in this as well. Just sort of lay my cards out on the table. I'm a very big Adam McKay fan.
Yeah.
I really like what he does. I know his films aren't to everyone's taste. I've definitely talked to people who hate Adam McKay's style of filmmaking, just the way he makes films, and I like, to a degree I can understand it.
It's just,
but
I mean, it's interesting how he's progressed as a filmmaker. The Big Short sort of being the crux of that. Because before that, if you've watched any Funny or Die movies or any Gary Sanchez productions, if you know Gary Sanchez, it's the one with the whip and the coffee. They're more often than not, because he's the vice of both companies, an Adam McKay directed film. So you've got Other Guys, Anchorman, Get Hard, Daddy's Home, Talladega Nights, any Step Brothers, almost all the Will Ferrell classics that are seen as some of the greatest comedies made. in the modern time, obviously.
In the 2000s,
Get Hard not so much,
Adam
but
McKay.
I love Get Hard. And then
Adam McKay's a producer, or at least a producer. Like Adam McKay just is producing films up the. Because I've got up his Wikipedia page, and there's like 20 films here that he's listed as being a producer on.
Yeah,
Daddy's Home, Holmes and Watson, The Menu, Tim and Eric's $1 Billion Movie, The Dictator, Grimsby, Booksmart, he's all these films. Yeah, so he's very much, and and he also does TV as well. He's got this Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, and Succession, which I finished recently. He's also a credited producer on that. But so Adam McKay really is just everywhere. He's and and he gets around. I remember when James Gunn was fired from Disney, Adam McKay was in talks with Marvel about taking over Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which would have been interesting. And as much as I like Adam McKay, I don't think he would have worked with the James Gunn script. I think Adam McKay would have to write his own script. Yeah, Adam McKay's got a very interesting career. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, his more serious films kicked off with The Big Short, which we're going to talk about. But I love that film. I watched it for the first time yesterday, actually. And then he follows up with films like Vice and then Don't Look Up, which are both also, like, you can see the progression of him still playing into comedy, but becoming a little bit more politically minded instead of just I know what we'll do. We'll get Will Ferrell and we'll get John C. Reilly because they're both curly-headed old guys, and we'll have them play off each other for an hour and a half. Which, don't get me wrong, I mean, did you hear that? Great films, but
yeah. So Adam McKay, he's and it was weird watching all, because I watched The Big Short and that sort of, and Vice and his sort of more politically motivated films first, and then I went back to sort of comedy stuff, and I'm like, you can still see sort of the DNA of like sort of political left wing ish type politics in his earlier films, and I'm like, it makes sense. I think there is, I've definitely seen criticisms of Adam McKay from sort of right wing people being like, oh, he's sort of distorting reality, or he's trying to make it look like the right are the bad guys, and I'm like, I don't think he does, to be honest. I think Vice, Dick Cheney is not a great guy, by all accounts, but I don't think it portrays him like, oh, he's just the bad guy doing bad guy things. I think Vice portrays him as like a guy put in a difficult position who made some bad call, But yeah, and I think a lot of right wing people get upset at Adam McKay, and even though all he's doing is just bringing up like facts that like about things that happened, like there's that post credit scene in Vice where there's like this person's like, oh, there's like right wing characters like, oh, it's all liberal, it's all, and then this other guy's like, oh, it's all this like, oh, so I'm a liberal because I understand facts, and I'm like, well, you're not. Yeah, I think that's the yeah. But yeah, it's interesting because Adam McKay, I really like what he does. It's interesting to watch his, The Big Short, I think, is his best film. So I certainly think it's his best work as a director. He won an Oscar for adapted screenplay, which I think is a very well-deserved win.
Yeah. I don't think it's his best, personally. I think his best is the first Anchorman film. But that's because I grew up with those films. I grew up watching Step Brothers, Anchorman, The Other Guys, Talladega Nights. Like, those were my movies.
Yeah.
Although I do think that this is great. Just to touch on The Big Short for a second, for listeners who may not know, it is about the 2008 housing bubble burst. It's the story of the two men who figured it out beforehand and profited.
I'm gonna say, I'm maybe I'm just not that smart, but I'm still like a little bit confused on what
Yeah,
and how the whole thing works.
the amount of times they said
Um,
CDOs really fucked me, but Selena Gomez helped with that, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, the
and then there's
film.
the Margot Robbie cameo as well.
Oh my lord, you do not have to. Oh, they didn't have to go do all that, man.
For those who haven't seen The Big Short, which I don't know why you'd listen to this if you haven't, but if you haven't seen it, there's a bit where the film's basically like, all right, and now we're going to have Margot Robbie in a bath explaining how this thing works.
Yeah, and then they have
Which,
Selena
to be fair,
Gomez playing blackjack and explaining how CDOs work, which is a really great.
which again, this is a thing that I think a lot of people won't like about Adam McKay is that he just does weird shit with his films. He just like sort of breaks the fourth wall. But I'm fine with that. I think it works. You know, I'm
Yeah, it
fine
was
with
a lot,
him.
but to be honest, when you're explaining things that will go over an audience head, I think that's completely fine.
Yeah, you need to spell it out because it's like this is complex things that we're dealing with. But yeah, so yeah, it's about the housing crash of 2008, and actually one of my at uni last semester, one of my lecturers, yeah, she basically said you should go watch this. It's a great film, and I'd heard it was a great film, and yeah, it's a great film. It's a great film. But yeah, we've got a great ensemble cast. We've got Steve Carell in there, which I love. Steve Carell. I think Steve Carell is one of the best. Honestly, probably one of the best actors working. I really
he's really great in serious
love
roles
Steve.
as well.
Yeah, he that's true. He's a wonderful comedic actor. Like him in Anchorman, he's fantastic in the Anchorman films in that sort of comedic role.
If you want to go to a party in my pants, a pants party, party with no pants.
I haven't seen a whole lot of the US Office, but I've heard that he's excellent in that, and I'm sure I will think. But yeah, he sort of also does more serious roles occasionally. I think this is I think he brings a lot to this role. He brings a real great sort of emotional side to the film because a lot of the film is just characters just like talking really fast to each other, but you sort of got Steve Carell in there as sort of the human side of it to sort of bring an emotional core to the film, which I think is really great. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think personally for me, some of the standout performances, Christian Bale was great. I think Ryan Gosling, obviously, Brad Pitt as well, playing Ben Rickett was great, but Jeremy Strong did an amazing job, especially going up against the cast of Brad Pitt, Ryan Gosling, Christian Bale, and Steve Carell. That is so daunting. And Jeremy Strong, he played Vinny. I thought he was like a standout. I was watching that and I'm like, he was so enthralling. Marissa Tomei,
he's in yeah. I mean, Jeremy Strong, he's in Succession, and he's really good in Succession. He's like the lead of Succession. He's great in that. But I think across the board, I think the cast are all really good. I think Adam McKay is very good at creating really great ensemble casts, and they all give great. Like in Vice, I think the cast in Vice is great. In Anchorman, all the cast is great.
Yeah.
I do feel like Paul Rudd was I kind of wish Paul Rudd was in The Big Short as the character because I think he could have been really great in this.
Good in Anchorman, yeah. Yeah, I mean, even when it's not a crazy ensemble cast, look at the film The Other Guys. Like, it's Will Ferrell, Mark Wahlberg, and then you got, like, Michael Keaton, Samuel L. Jackson,
and The Rock in, like, cameos.
Yeah. But, oh, my God. It's so much fun.
But, yeah, no, Ryan Gosling is really great. Christian Bale, is obviously great. I mean, I don't think I'm upsetting the apple cart by saying Christian Bale's a great actor. He's a bit of a knob, but he's a very good actor. Brad Pitt as well, also a very good actor. Yeah, I just think I just really love the ensemble cast here, and they all have they don't none of them sort of like. I don't think any of the cast are overshining the rest. If you know what I mean, like there's no one who is like overshadowing is the word I should have used. Like they're all like sort of on an equal pegging.
And it's easy for that to happen when you have people like Brad Pitt, who feels like an actor who would sort of
he just has charisma. Yeah, Brad Pitt's just one of those actors who just has charisma from just everywhere. Like he's just sort of like. You put Brad Pitt in something, and there's just a certain, he just overpowers the film, but he doesn't. And I think Brad Pitt sort of playing against type. He's not really sort of the Brad Pitt
He's a very
performance
it's
that
a
I
very
expected.
conservative role.
Yeah, he's very much he's sort of like a weird like he's sort of a bit of a strange bloke. That's his whole sort of thing. Is
he still gets his moral high ground at the end of the day, though.
I wouldn't say this film's a comedy, but it definitely has some like.
I think it genres itself as a comedy.
It sort of has flourishes of comedy, but it's not an explicit comedy in a way that Anchorman is. It's a bit more of it's got a bit more of a serious edge to it.
Yeah, its comedy comes in the fourth wall breaks, such as the scene when Selena Gomez is explaining CDOs. She goes, a artificial CDO or a synthetic CDO, which is when I place a bet for $10 million that I'm going to win. There's an 87% chance this hand wins against the dealer. And then two people will place a bet on my bet, on the outcome of that bet. And then other people will place a bet on the outcome of their bet. And it's a chain reaction until you have 1 million people betting on things that they don't even know what they're betting on it anymore. And it's all made up and it's all fictional. But,
I think this film, it does not shy away from the negative aspects of this. Like, it's a very, it's quite dark, I would say. It's because it's just reality. It's just like, this is pretty terrible. And the film doesn't shy away from that. And it doesn't shy away from the fact that a lot of the people involved in this are not great people. It doesn't try and make them look cool.
Yeah, it does a really great job in carrying a tone between having a bit of comedy in there, but also having an ensemble cast that people will be like, oh my god, it's a movie about the stock market. I want to get into stocks looking at this cast. And then just being like, this is a very horrible thing is about to happen, and you're watching people profit off it like crazy. And I want to speak in a second about investment in housing, which I know is what the film is about.
Yeah.
But I just also wanted to mention, I was just watching this film. It's about an hour and a bit in, and I'm just watching, and I'm sort of, they get to a scene where two people are sitting by a pool, and I'm watching, and I'm like, oh my god, it's fucking Karen Gillan. Just came out of nowhere. I was watching it, and I'm like,
yeah.
Bloody
I was looking at the cast list, and I was looking at the cast list again, because it's been a little bit. I mean, I watched it recently, but I was looking at the cast list and I'm like, oh, Karen Gillan's in this, and I completely forgot she was in this film for
I literally said it to my roommate who I was watching the film with. I said, oh my god, that's Nebula. I was like, oh cool, Karen Gillan's in this. I was like, that's so sick. I have the biggest crush on Karen Gillan. But but I was like, oh my god, that's awesome.
I think this film also has a very looming sense of dread. It's like we're sort of going towards this inevitable fucking fuck up. We're moving towards an inevitable
burst of
negative conclusion.
The whole conclusion is this is going to destroy the economy, and it does.
Yeah,
for a while,
it does.
Until the banks bail them out.
Yeah, and it's crazy, and I really enjoyed those kinds of stories where you're sort of going towards an inevitable, something that's a bad thing is going to happen, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I really, really like that in this film, that they show that even though they try to stop it, they just can't. That nothing. They're not going to be able to stop it. I think that's really, really investing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the way they used the just from a filmmaking and editing perspective, the way they put quotes in between each time jump. It goes to black and it shows a quote on the screen, and then it'll jump to 2007, or the way it clearly shows you it's 2008 by showing the iPhone and stuff, the first iPhone, so you know that okay, it's now 2008. Anyone who knows anything knows that was when the housing bubble burst. And I think that it's, I don't know, they do that in a really great way. Also, the fourth wall break scenes, which we have touched on, but for example, when Mark Baum, which is Steve Carell's character, gets up and says it's a 0% chance that your thing's not gonna fail or whatever, and he gets up and he leaves that conference. And the guy goes, yeah, he actually said that. He actually fucking did that. Like, and he actually got up in this meeting and said those, like, and I'm like, yeah, that's a really good way of, like, sort of keeping a based on a true story is in, like, that's a really great way to do that, I think.
Yeah, again, I think I'm fine with Adam McKay doing stuff that can sort of pull an audience out, and he just straight up has a narrator address the audience. Like, I think I'm fine with that. I know that can be very annoying for a lot of people, but I really like that. I'm fine with I'm fine with filmmakers trying new things with the form.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about the first and I guess the second Deadpool is, like, the first Deadpool, the comic book form had just been you're watching, but then it was like, oh, this is a tie into real world. In the first one, it was really fun. In the second one, it was like, okay, you're just saying pop culture references for the audience now, which I understand that's what the character does, but it's not as good as just literally holding, like, just telling us, just giving us exposition halfway through the film. Just being like, oh, by the way, they've mentioned CDOs a lot. I don't know if you know what that is. This is what it is. We'll have Selena Gomez explain it. Like, how fun is that?
Yeah, I think, again, Adam McKay does this a lot. He did it in Vice, where there's Alfred Molina, and he's like a waiter, and he's talking to these, like, politicians, like, oh, here's all these things we can do. Like, there's Guantanamo Bay, and he's explaining what that is, and all these great, and I'm like, I think that's a great first of all, that's a great usage of Alfred Molina and things in a film. And I just really like how, I do kind of appreciate how much Adam McKay clearly doesn't give a fuck. He just makes what he wants to make, and he just, like, does what he wants to do with films, and I really appreciate that in a filmmaker when they just, like, fuck it, I'll do what I want. I feel like there aren't as many filmmakers like that now. Like, there's still great filmmakers, but there's not as many as I kind of wish there were, who just do whatever they want, regardless of what people think. Like, I think, for all the love I have for the MCU, there is a certain degree of, like, it feels like it does kind of neuter a lot of the filmmakers it gets involved. Like, they get really great filmmakers, but it does sort of
I
away.
Absolutely agree.
It's not like to say the films are poorly directed or anything. It's just like,
it goes through
Guardians of the Galaxy.
It goes through a filter. It goes through an MCU filter.
Yeah, like, James Gunn, I think, is a very good director, but certainly I don't think the first Guardians really feels like a James Gunn film, in the sense of, like, it's kind of a bit more restrained. I think sort of as the Guardians films go on, they start to feel more like a James Gunn film,
Yeah.
Multiverse of Madness, I thought, was kind of similar with Sam Raimi, but less so, because I did feel like that film very much did feel like a Sam Raimi film for the most part. So they're sort of pulling back a bit away from that now, but I do like when filmmakers are just I don't love everything he does, but I do kind of appreciate that Quentin Tarantino is just sort of just does what he wants to do with films. I don't always like what he does, but I
respect it.
I respect filmmakers for going out and trying new things. We touched on Christopher Nolan a little while ago, and I didn't love all of his films, but I can respect him for trying new things with his films, like Tenet.
Yeah.
As much as I don't really care for Tenet, I have to give him some props for trying something new that you don't see. And Adam McKay sort of does that in editing. He does does some crazy ass editing, or there's, like, purposeful continuity errors and everything. Like, it's great. I really, really appreciate what Adam McKay does as a filmmaker.
No, I think that very much so. I agree with you where it comes to the point of having sort of not have to run the film by anyone. And I quite, because he owns his own production company. Well, he's the vice of his own production companies anyway. But, like, I'm a massive Adam McKay fan. I think,
Yeah,
but
I
like,
think that's what we've established.
yeah.
That we're both big fans.
I did want to touch on sort of the point of the film is about the housing market and a big moral, or the housing bubble burst of 2008, where the banks have to be bailed out. It's all to do with mortgages and stuff. It deals within the roofs of people, and a very, very, very sort of, I guess, prominent idea in our country anyway is housing.
It's yeah,
So I think we're in for another burst. So can't wait for The Big Short
yeah,
2. On the point of it though, is a lot of people, housing is just a very big political issue at the moment. So to watch
yeah.
this
It's
film, it
awful.
was quite relevant. I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, because I did one of my business classes last semester. Yeah, we were talking about yeah, how housing was sort of we had sort of this thing we had to do, like a smaller part of a larger assessment piece. We had a bunch of ethical issues, and what there was like things like should we replace like people who smoke cigarettes, should we replace give them vapes instead, which
No,
no, because vapes are actually also really bad for you. I don't remember which one I did, but there was one about like the housing crisis. Um, no, I think it was like should landlords like increase the rent, like how much rent costs,
because their mortgage goes
or
up.
something to that effect. Yeah,
Which
um,
no.
and I think it's crazy how because I went on a walk today, just before we started recording, and I walked past a house that had just been sold. But it's just like I'm at a point where I'm like, when I get my own place, it's gonna be expense. Like the likelihood is I'm not gonna like buy a house. I'm gonna get like an apartment or something, like rental or something, because housing is just ridiculous. It's unbelievable what it is. I'm not
Yeah.
overly familiar with housing costs because I don't have to worry about that yet. But it's like the the way everything is going right now, housing is going to be ridiculously. But like the time I'm finished uni and everything, like housing costs are going to be so much higher than they are now, and it's going to be
Oh, who
oh,
knows?
it's gonna well,
Who knows?
there's it there. It might. Who knows? We don't know yet. Of course, things could totally change. But it's
At the way it's
interesting. Yeah,
tracking, yeah.
it's not looking good. And I think yeah, it's interesting because yeah, The Big Short, like the events of that, aren't that didn't take place that long ago in the grand like 2008. Like that's like what 15
15
years
years
ago.
ago,
That's like
yeah.
that's barely any time at all. I mean, it's in my lifetime. Like that happened. It's not. I wasn't aware of it, but like it
Yeah,
it
neither.
occurred during my life. But it occurred during my life. It's very interesting to watch films at events that occurred during my lifetime, because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, seeing films about various wars or stuff about 9/11 or anything like that. Like I didn't experience any of that, so it's very interesting to watch those because it's like, oh, that was before my time, so I don't have any sort of.
It's going to be interesting to watch
I'm trying
Dumb
to think.
Money, because I actively remember Dumb Money, like the...
Yeah, I remember I went to like my first day of high school for that year. It was all people were talking about. One of my friends was like he wanted to get involved, he wanted to start investing, but he wasn't like old enough to. And by the time he like was able to, it wasn't worth it anymore. Like it was barely worth anything. It wasn't worth nearly as much as it was. So it's just like, what's the point? But it's going to be so interesting when we start getting films about major events that occurred during our lifetime.
Yeah.
Like we're going to start getting films about like, I don't know, COVID or something, or like the 2020 election. Like those kinds of films where it's like that was a thing that occurred during our lifetime that certainly I remember. And it's going to be so interesting seeing those films, because I imagine people, every sort of generation gets those kinds of films, where it's like, oh, I remember where I was during insert event or whatever, and it's like, it's going to be very interesting to see when they start making films about stuff that happened during our times that we remember, when we were younger. Um, but yeah, it's the Big Short. Yeah, it's quite not good
No,
because of the
but great film, great film.
um it's a really great film. Don't get me wrong. I think it's and I think and again, that's another Adam McKay thing. With Vice, it's the same with Dick Cheney when he was vice president. Same with Don't Look Up, which was about climate change. I don't know if you're aware of what his next film is. I imagine you probably don't. But like basically, for those who don't know, Adam McKay's next film is called Average Height, Average Build, and it's going to star Robert Pattinson as the lead, I believe, and it's going to be about this guy who he becomes like the president or something, and he wants to like legalize murder or something like that. Like I gotta find what it said because it was something to that effect. But another Adam McKay film that was in development that I don't know if it's gonna happen anymore. It's called Bad Blood. Basically, Bad Blood. They made a TV show called The Dropout recently, which is for what I've got the same thing. It's about a woman named Elizabeth Holmes who created a biotech company for like blood tests. And then it turned out it was all bullshit. She was just lying. Got a lot of like I gotta find how much money she got, but basically tricked people into giving her a ton of money for this investment that was bullshit, and that wasn't gonna work at all. Like, because basically how blood tests work is that you have a blood test and then it takes ages for you to find out the results. But this technology basically would tell you like immediately what the results were, which would be a whole thing. But then it turned out that it wasn't true. It was all a bunch of shit. It wasn't. Yeah, and it was not real. And they did make a TV show with Amanda Seyfried last year, so they might not make the film anymore because the TV show's done it. But yeah, exactly. So and it's very much that's very in fitting with Adam McKay's style. He takes films about real events or something real going on, like climate change with Don't Look Up, and he brings a sort of comedic edge to it, but on sort of the backdrop of a very serious issue in the housing market. It's very depressing to watch how, because like people like are aware, like, well, because like what is it, Steve Carell's character it's Christian Bale's character figures it out, and then is it Steve Carell as well who finds out and he gets involved? Like there's a few people who get involved.
Yeah, there's the
to
two
try and
dudes who work with Brad Pitt's character. Steve Carell gets involved with Ryan Gosling's character, who also figures it out.
I just think it's a very great film. It is able to balance tone really well. Like the comedy sort of doesn't overpower the film. Like it never, to me, it doesn't feel like when it's meant to be a serious moment, it's like it is a serious moment. It doesn't have like sort of comedy to sort of brighten it up or anything. It's like, no, this is a serious moment. You need to take this seriously, And I think some films are they have problems with that, where they don't let serious moments breathe.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can't stop comparing it in my head to The Wolf of Wall Street, which is valid. They're very prominent, high cast Margot Robbie stock market films. I find like Wolf of Wall Street is just 110 miles per hour all the time, all guns blazing, go, go, go. Whereas this one, it gives you those seconds to breathe. There are seconds of just, there's like a 30-second scene where it's just pure silence. They're showing like clips. It's like the transition to 2008, right after the burst, I believe it is. And it's just quiet. And you're like, okay, cool. All right, cool. It's very, very much a film that I could watch at any given time and not feel like I need the time to watch it. Does that make sense? Like, it's not going to take my day.
And this film is like over 2 hours long, but it doesn't feel 2 hours. Like it uses that runtime effectively, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
because I just I think a lot of films are too long for just sort of for arbitrary reasons. They're like, oh, I need a film needs to be this long, and I'm just like, no, it doesn't. But I think this film uses its 2 hour runtime very effectively, and I don't think it wastes time with what it's doing. It's which is good because
yeah, absolutely, that's fine. It works well. I reckon personally, I give it a 7 or an 8. Maybe I reckon I give it an 8. I really enjoy this film.
Yeah, I give it an 8 out of 10 as well. I was when I was watching it, I was like, is this a 9? But I'm like, no, I've seen better movies, and that's basic. That's basically how I look at it. I'm like, well, it's a good film. It's a very good film for a lot of it, but it's not. I've seen better films, but
Yeah.
it's Adam. It's my favorite Adam McKay film. I really enjoy it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he makes next because I really like what he does.
Yeah.
And he seems to just be putting all his films on streaming now, on Netflix or Apple TV, or
which makes it easier for us.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't think we've got much else to say on The Big Short.
Yeah, no, it was a big shot and it worked.
So thank you all for listening to this week's episode. As we mentioned at the beginning, apologies if the audio quality sounds a bit different. It's just, changes. And Harry was recording this week, so it might sound a little bit different. But next week, if everything works out, next week's episode should be a real good one because Harry's been very, very adamant. I don't know if adamant's the word. Harry's very, very keen to talk about what we're going to talk about next week. Because he's a very, very big fan, and I am too. And I haven't watched them in ages, so I'm interested to see if my feelings hold up. So thank you all for listening to this week's episode. Check out all the previous episodes that we have done, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.